The silence between Mark and me was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Sitting across from him at our kitchen table, the same one we picked out together at a flea market when we first moved in, I could barely meet his eyes. It wasn't supposed to be like this. 8 years of marriage, and here we were, drifting apart on an ocean of unsaid words and unshared moments. I filled the void with work, or so I told myself, burying the guilt under layers of spreadsheets and client meetings. Then came the team building event that changed everything. Alex, with his easy smile and a passion for the outdoors, walked into my life, or rather, I into his. He was new to the company, and something about him felt like a breath of fresh air in my suffocating routine. We clicked over shared interests, hiking, photography, and a love for the kind of music that wasn't on everyone's playlists. It was innocent at first, or so I wanted to believe. Lunches with Alex became the highlights of my days, breaking the monotony of my job. He listened, really listened, to me in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. "You're incredible, Julia. Mark's a lucky guy," he'd say, and I'd brush off the compliment with a smile, ignoring the flutter in my chest. Mark noticed the changes before I did. "You're home late again," he observed one evening, his voice devoid of accusation, yet it stung. "Work's been crazy," I lied, avoiding his gaze. My phone buzzed with a message from Alex, and I felt a thrill mixed with a pang of guilt. It was after one such late evening at work, under the pretense of finalizing a project, that Alex and I crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The first kiss was a spark that ignited a fire, consuming all reason and caution. "We shouldn't have done that," I whispered, even as I leaned in for another kiss. The lies began to pile up. Dinners turned into late nights, and, stuck at work, became my go-to excuse. Mark's discovery of a hotel receipt in my purse should have been the wake-up call. Instead, it was a silent acknowledgement of the chasm between us. He didn't confront me, and I didn't confess. The receipt lay there between us, a tangible proof of my betrayal, yet unspoken. The thrill of the secret had me spinning, losing grip on the life I thought I wanted. Sonia, my oldest friend, tried to anchor me back to reality over coffee one brisk morning. "Julia, this isn't you," she said, her voice laced with concern. "You're playing with fire." But her words, meant to douse the flames, only fueled my rebellion. I was too far gone, chasing the rush that came with every stolen moment with Alex. Our audacity peaked when I concocted a plan for a weekend getaway, masked as a work conference. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but the anticipation of uninterrupted time with Alex sweetened the deceit. I left under the guise of professional obligation, ignoring the nagging guilt in the pit of my stomach. The universe, it seems, conspired to unravel my web of lies when Mark, in a rare gesture of spontaneity, decided to surprise me at the conference. His call, filled with confusion and hurt, was a cold splash of reality. "Julia, they have no record of you," he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and suspicion. Panic clawed at me, but I feigned ignorance, promising to sort it out, knowing well there was nothing to sort. The gravity of my actions hit me then. I knew I had to end things with Alex, to salvage what remained of my conscience. Yet, when faced with the decision, my resolve crumbled. Alex, with his persuasive charm, convinced me we could navigate the storm together. His words, a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of my guilt, tethered me to him once more. Unbeknownst to me, Mark's trust had eroded to the point of no return. The GPS tracker he installed in my car confirmed his worst fears. The digital breadcrumbs left no room for the benefit of the doubt, painting a vivid picture of my betrayal. The intensity of my affair with Alex escalated, our reckless abandon manifesting in more nights away from home, each one a hammer to the foundation of my marriage with Mark. Meanwhile, Mark, armed with a private investigator, collected the evidence of my duplicity, photos, messages, a narrative of infidelity that no denial could refute. Guilt, a relentless shadow, finally caught up with me. In a desperate attempt to mend the fractures, I planned a romantic dinner for Mark, hoping to rekindle a spark I feared was extinguished. The evening was set, the table dressed in reconciliation and remorse, waiting for a guest who had every right not to show. The night was supposed to be a turning point, a chance to mend the frayed edges of my marriage with Mark. The table was set, candles flickering with hope, when my phone vibrated with a message from Alex. "Need to see you tonight. Urgent," it read, and in that moment, the fragile resolve I had built crumbled. I texted Mark, fabricating a sudden work crisis, feeling the lie settle heavy in my chest. The disappointment in his one-word reply, okay, was palpable, a silent echo of the chasm I had widened between us. The confrontation with Mark was inevitable. When I returned home, the remnants of the untouched dinner greeted me, a stark symbol of my betrayal. Mark was waiting, his face a mask of hurt and anger, holding screenshots of messages, photos, and evidence gathered over weeks. The air was thick with tension as accusations flew, my confession spilling out in a desperate plea for understanding. "It's over with Alex," I insisted, but the words sounded hollow, even to my ears. Mark's decision to leave was swift. With a duffel bag in hand and a resolve I had never seen in him, he stepped out of the door of our home, of our life together, leaving me to grapple with the magnitude of my actions. The silence of the house was a stark reminder of the solitude I had engineered through my choices. In the days that followed, I attempted to bridge the gap I had created, reaching out to Mark with apologies, promises, and pleas for a chance to explain. But my efforts were met with silence. Mark, once my confidant and partner, had become a stranger, his refusal to see or speak to me a clear message of the irreparable damage I had caused. Alex's departure from my life was the final blow in a series of losses. "This has gotten too complicated," he said, his voice void of the warmth I had grown accustomed to. Our affair, once an escape, had become a source of isolation, leaving me stranded in the aftermath of my decisions. Desperate for any form of connection to Mark, I reached out, only to find my calls unanswered, my messages unread. The digital world we once shared had been locked away from me, his phone number changed, my presence erased from his social media. The reality of my solitude was complete, a stark contrast to the life filled with shared moments and companionship I had taken for granted. The moment the divorce papers landed on my desk at work, it felt like the world had come to a standstill. There, amidst the buzz of office life, my personal failures were laid bare for all to see. "Julia Turner?" the courier had asked, his presence drawing the curious eyes of my coworkers. The envelope he handed me was heavy, not just with paper but with the finality of Mark's decision. Infidelity cited in black and white, the word echoed through my mind, a label now publicly attached to my name. The divorce proceedings that followed were a blur of legal jargon and cold negotiations. Mark, armed with undeniable evidence of my affair, was unyielding. The settlement skewed heavily in his favor, but I signed the papers. Fighting for material possessions felt trivial when I had already lost what truly mattered. My signature, once shared with love on cards and letters to Mark, now sealed the end of our marriage. The fallout from my personal life seeped into my professional one. Whispers turned into rumors, and rumors into an uncomfortable truth that everyone seemed to know but no one mentioned. My boss called me into his office, citing distractions and the need for a more focused leadership, as he handed me the notice of demotion. The professional respect I had worked so hard to build crumbled, a casualty of my own making. Moving out of the home I shared with Mark and into a small, nondescript apartment felt like stepping into a life that wasn't mine. The walls were bare, the silence a stark reminder of the chaos I had created. I unpacked boxes of belongings that felt foreign, remnants of a past life that now seemed like a distant dream. In a moment of desperation, I wrote Mark a letter. Words poured out, apologies, explanations, and pleas for forgiveness. I spoke of regret and the profound sorrow that had taken residence in my heart. But the letter went unanswered, a silent testament to the bridge I had burned beyond repair. Mark had moved on, advice from his lawyer and friends guiding him away from the wreckage of our marriage. I heard through the grapevine of his efforts to rebuild, a task he undertook without a backward glance. The finality of his silence was a lesson in the consequences of my actions, a message received loud and clear. The reality of his new life hit me at a mutual friend's wedding. There he was, looking genuinely happy, with someone new by his side. The sight of them together, so content, was a punch to the gut, a visceral reminder of what I had lost. The happiness I had once taken for granted in Mark's eyes was now shared with another, and I was but a spectator to his newfound joy. The day Alex announced he was leaving the company felt like the final thread of my old life snapping. There I was, standing in the break room, coffee in hand, as he shared his news of a new job in another city. The room filled with congratulations and well wishes, a stark contrast to the isolation that settled around me. I forced a smile, murmuring a generic, "happy for you," while my stomach churned with the realization that I was truly alone in the aftermath of our affair. Counseling sessions became my refuge, the one place where I could unpack the guilt and remorse that had taken residence within me. You need to forgive yourself, Julia, my therapist would say, her voice a beacon of hope in the darkness I had created. Yet, forgiveness felt like a foreign concept, an unreachable shore as I navigated the stormy seas of my own making. The blow came unexpectedly one evening as I scrolled through social media. A picture of Mark and his new partner, smiling, with an engagement ring prominently displayed. The caption, "She said yes," was a punch to the gut, a vivid reminder of the life I had forfeited. I stared at the screen, the happiness radiating from the photo a stark contrast to the loneliness enveloping me. It was the push I needed to make a change. Decision made, I handed in my resignation, the prospect of starting anew in a different city the only glimmer of hope on my horizon. My last day at the office was a sobering affair, marked by awkward goodbyes and the tangible distance of colleagues who once were friends. Their coldness was a silent judgment, a reminder of the social repercussions of my actions. Packing up my life felt like an archaeological dig through the ruins of my past. Each item I decided to sell or give away, a picture frame, a collection of books, souvenirs from trips taken with Mark, was a step towards letting go, an attempt to lighten the load of my guilt. The night before my departure, I found myself outside the house Mark and I once shared. Parked across the street, I took it in one last time, the memories flooding back. This house, once a symbol of our shared dreams and plans for the future, now stood as a monument to my mistakes. The ache in my heart was sharp as I reflected on everything that had transpired, the choices that led me here, to this moment of farewell. The moment I stepped into my new role in a different city, it felt like taking a breath after being underwater for too long. The job, though not as prestigious or well-paying as my previous position, offered something far more valuable, a chance at a fresh start. I found solace in the routine, the anonymity of being new, where my past didn't shadow every interaction. Seeking healing, I joined a therapy group, a band of strangers each carrying their own stories of regret and recovery. It was here, amidst their shared vulnerabilities, that I found a semblance of peace, a community where my confessions were met with nods of understanding rather than judgment. The idea of dating again felt like stepping onto a battlefield unarmed. My first few attempts were clumsy, marred by the ghosts of my past. Dates would ask, "Why did your last relationship end?" And my answers, vague and evasive, would hang between us, an insurmountable wall. Trust, I learned, was not easily given nor received. When news of Mark's marriage reached me, it was a quiet blow, delivered through the grapevine of mutual friends. They said it was a small, intimate ceremony, full of happiness, a happiness I once thought would be shared with me. The news anchored me to a profound sadness, a reminder of the life I had forfeited. In search of companionship that asked for no explanations, I adopted a dog. The unconditional love of a pet, I discovered, was a balm to the loneliness that had taken residence in my heart. In her, I found a reason to come home, a presence that filled the apartment with life. Therapy sessions became a mirror, reflecting the harm my actions had caused not just to Mark, but to myself. The understanding didn't come easily, it was a battle against denial and self-pity. But with each session, I began to see the contours of my own responsibility, the shape of my guilt, and the pathway to forgiveness of self. Volunteering at the local community center became my next step towards redemption. Here, amidst the clamor of children's laughter and the gratitude of those we helped, I found purpose. Giving back, I realized, was a way to rebuild the pieces of myself lost in the selfish choices I had made. The news of Mark expecting a child was another jolt, a reminder of the life that continued beyond the scope of my influence. The sense of loss was palpable, a mourning for the future that could have been. Yet, it also served as a stark reminder of the consequences of my actions, the ripple effects that continued to touch lives beyond my own. Amidst the turmoil of personal growth and setbacks, a ray of hope emerged in the form of a promotion at work. It was a tangible sign of progress, an acknowledgement of my efforts to rebuild professionally. This achievement, though small in the grand scheme, felt monumental, a marker of the distance I had traveled from the person who had upended her own life in pursuit of fleeting happiness. In this new city, with its challenges and opportunities, I began to weave a new narrative for myself, one marked by growth, understanding, and the pursuit of redemption. The journey was far from over, but each step forward was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for change, and the endless possibility of beginning anew. From the moment I stepped into the bustling coffee shop, I could sense the shift in my universe. It was during a brief visit back to my old city, a test to see how far I'd come. Lost in thought, I almost didn't notice him at first. Mark, sitting at a corner table, his attention buried in a book. Our eyes met, and time seemed to freeze, a moment charged with 1,000 unspoken words. Julia, he acknowledged, his voice carrying a polite but unmistakable distance. I approached, my heart pounding with a cocktail of emotions, regret, nostalgia, and a faint hope for absolution. It's been a long time, I started, stumbling over the words that seemed inadequate to bridge the gap between us. Yeah, it has, Mark replied, offering a small, guarded smile. How are you? I'm better, working on myself, I said, feeling the weight of my journey in those words. I heard about your son. Congratulations, Mark. I'm truly happy for you. Thank you, Julia. We're over the moon, he said, his eyes lighting up at the mention of his child, a glimpse of the joy that had filled the social media photos. Our conversation was a dance around the edges of what had once been, careful and measured. Yet, in his politeness, I found my closure. It was time to let go, not just in words but in the heart. Returning to my new city felt different this time. I carried with me a sense of peace, an understanding that seeing Mark happy was the final piece in accepting the end of our chapter. My focus shifted fully to the future, to building a life rich in purpose and self-awareness. Inspired by my own experiences, I launched a blog, sharing insights on personal growth and the lessons learned from making life-altering mistakes. The response was heartwarming, a community of readers who found solace in shared stories of fallibility and redemption. Through their engagement, I found a sense of belonging, a reminder that no one is alone in their struggles. My active involvement in the community, leading support groups, and advocating for mental health awareness, became my new passion. It was a way to give back, to support others in their journey towards healing, just as I had been supported. Reflecting on my journey, from the depths of betrayal and loss to the heights of personal growth and newfound purpose, I understood the true cost of my choices. Yet, amidst the regrets, there was a profound gratitude for the lessons learned and the strength found in vulnerability. Life, with all its twists and turns, had brought me to a place of acceptance. Acceptance of my past, with its imperfections, and hope for the future, filled with endless possibilities. The road ahead was no longer overshadowed by the mistakes of yesterday but illuminated by the promise of tomorrow. In the end, it wasn't about forgetting or erasing the past but learning to live with it, allowing it to shape me into someone better, someone stronger. As I closed the chapter on this tumultuous period of my life, I looked forward to the unwritten pages, ready to fill them with new stories of resilience, compassion, and growth. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where